Torah Q A. What attributes did God create the world with, and what fundamentals does it exist on? Torah Q A. What attributes did God create the world with, and what fundamentals does it exist on? Mainly two attributes, as the Torah tells, but in truth it's truly four attributes because of the first two, to teach a big lesson, mainly to all of creation. The attributes God created the world with was with the attributes of justice and judgment. Then two other attributes in addition, because of the first two attributes, which are the attributes of mercy and compassion. So the attributes God created the world with are the attributes of justice, judgment, mercy, and compassion. So there are four attributes technically, but this is the way the Torah teaches it. So the attribute of justice teaches mercy with justice, because you can't really survive scrutiny without mercy with justice. So keep in mind, there's mercy, but it was coupled with justice, its own kind of mercy toward the manifestation of justice. So getting a little mystical here too. So then teaches, you'll know what I'm saying when I'm emphasizing mercy here. So then there's the attribute of judgment. Then there's the attribute of judgment. Bear in mind, the Torah teaches the attribute of mercy before judgment. Unlike the last one, which is the attribute of justice, which is mercy with justice. But with the attribute of judgment, the second attribute here, bear in mind again, the Torah teaches the attribute of judgment is of mercy before judgment. So that's justice for you too, with mercy before judgment. So it was already there in its own manifestation toward the first two attributes that God created the world with. So remember, the first two, really, are the attributes of justice and mercy, and then the next two are because of the first two attributes, because the Torah teaches, as the Torah teaches, the world can't survive, can't exist really without the next two, which are the attributes of mercy and compassion. So again, technically there's really four attributes, but mainly it's the first two, which are the attributes of justice and so mainly it's the first two attributes, which are the attributes of justice and judgment. Now keep in mind, the actual categories of the next two, after the first two, are branches, but they're really truly, in essence, are truly their own categories, which are the attributes of mercy, the attribute of mercy, and the attribute of compassion. They're, you can say, independent on their own due to the fact, but really they're created because of the first two attributes. So keep that in mind now. So the attribute of mercy and compassion are after the first two attributes, which are justice and judgment, because the Torah teaches the world would not be able to survive without them. The world would not be able to exist without them. So then, then there's the attribute of mercy due to the attributes of justice and judgment. Which is really then the attribute of mercy due to justice because of judgment. Then the attribute of compassion. Kindness mainly branches out of this one now, keep in mind. Kindness is out of compassion. Kindness is from compassion always. People don't know that. It's a mystic. That's a mystic for you there. Mystics for you there, I should say. And mercy branches out too from compassion, folks. There is a mercy that's in the essence of compassion. Keep in mind. Aside from the fact of the third attribute that God created the world, which is mercy, actual mercy. So there's a secret lesson the Torah teaches here, is that the fact is that all four attributes, you find mercy in there. It's a big lesson to all of creation, really, is that the world mainly, I mean, I shouldn't say mainly, but it really does, exist and survive and exist because of mercy and compassion as well too. But I'd say from mercy more than compassion, if we're looking for what's higher and more or less here, right, folks? So again, the four attributes that God created, the attributes that God created the world with are the attributes of justice, the attribute of judgment, the attribute of mercy, and the attribute of compassion. If we don't have mercy on each other, we might not know how to judge right. Justice may not be prevailing the right way, obviously. There'd be a lot of war and bloodshed and misery and hell for everybody, I'm sure. In this world and probably in the after, if people don't fix their actions up and stuff, and ways up and stuff. So so again, with the attribute of mercy, it's self-explanatory, folks. People need to be more merciful these days, especially. People really need to do things the merciful way, primarily as far as all four attributes go, honestly, in life, in their lives too, to themselves and to all of existence, honestly. And compassion, you see somebody sick, or you see an old lady who, she's having trouble crossing the street. You're having mercy, but it's coming from compassion. But you're having compassion, you're walking her through it, or you might not be a compassionate guy, and you might walk her through it because you have mercy. Period. So it's funny, it sounds funny, but this is the truth, folks. So so again, these are factors. Really, these are four factors to truly, inject into your daily life, honestly. And these factors, remember, are the fundamentals. Truly, the first two are the first two fundamentals. But truly, the world can't exist without the next two, because of the first two attributes of God creating the world with. So again, these are the fundamentals God created the world with. And everyone says don't stray from your basic fundamentals, because that's what built you up. So if you do, you might go back down. You'll have to again regroup and go again with your own basic fundamentals. Well, I'm telling you that these are the fundamentals God created the world with. The first two and the next two after the first two. So these are technically all four fundamentals that God created the world with. And it's a great emphasis if you think about it. After the first two fundamentals, the last two fundamentals, after the first two attributes, the last two attributes, because of the first two attributes. And the Torah does stress and emphasize here that the world wouldn't be able to exist without, not too long I should say, really, the world wouldn't be able to exist without the last two attributes here. So we can say without these last two fundamentals here. So the world really should learn not to stray from all of these fundamentals, technically, again, seriously. So here's a quote, something in the Torah. This is what the Torah says, quote unquote. The Torah teaches, quote unquote, a person who renders a truthful judgment is a partner with Hashem in the act of creation. However, if one renders a corrupt decision, God says, I will take your life. Again, that was quote unquote from the Torah. Now, well, I'll get into an insight here. Like the Torah teaches on the highest soul level, a person, it's really compared to a fire as being the soul as a fire, which is a part of God, which is the highest soul level, because God you compare soul as a fire, which is a fire from God, of God. So the highest level is compared to a fire, which is the fire, a part of God's fire. in the ideology, in the ideological sense. So you'd say, you'd ask the question is, a person who renders a truthful judgment is a partner with Hashem in the act of creation, meaning in the sense of, how when you're creating something in a project, you have somebody in mind, and they're that boost that really made the boost during the creation of a certain project. So it's like saying God kept you in mind, because God knows everything, past, present, and future, of course, of all of creation, really, honestly. People, mainly, honestly, really. You could say it's like as if He kept you in mind in the ideological sense of when He was creating the world. I mean, when He was creating, actually, in the act of creation. So it was kind of like that part of you in the soul sense being created. So that's the explanation here. If you want to know the secret explanation here, I should say, in the quote that I just said, it's from the Torah, again from the Torah, quote unquote, from the Torah, it says, a person who renders a truthful judgment is a partner with Hashem in the act of creation. However, if one renders a corrupt decision, God says, I will take your life. So there's an insight, because I'm sure I'm sure you might have a question in your head to what this meant. So that was it, though. One of the explanations, I should say, or whatever. And there's another thing I wanted to put in here, as far as the ideological terms go, and being a partner, with as a quote said, a person who renders a truthful judgment is a partner with Hashem in the act of creation. However, if one renders a corrupt decision, God says, I will take your life. Again, with the idea of God keeping you in mind while He was doing it, because you will exist in the future or whatever, right? The birth of YITZCHAK, Isaac, the patriarch, the birth of YITZCHAK brought judgment into its prevailing effect. Because it says when YITZCHAK was born, that was judgment being injected into creation. Because it's not a bad thing, though. Everybody was worried because they thought maybe it would be something too strong for people to handle, maybe it could be bad or good or whatever. Just want to say it wasn't a bad thing, because he was truly qualified in knowing fully how to carry out judgment the right way. And you needed it, especially during that time, especially in these days today. It's something I should want to clarify from the Torah, because it's a question, when people are learning, they're really asking that question to each other, and they wouldn't let me explain it because they'd be focused back into learning after they talk about it, and of course I don't want to say something to disturb it. That's why I didn't explain it, honestly, really. So, also another thing I thought people would want to know is the world, now that we're talking about attributes, the world is sustained on attributes of judgment, truth, and peace. In case you wanted to know about that, by the way, folks, that's what the Torah teaches. The world is sustained on attributes of judgment, truth, and peace. So I want to end off with this lesson. Keep in mind, people, folks, is that this is another important thing to really consider as far as the treatment to one another and all of creation, obviously. The right way is, I'll end off on is teaching what the Torah teaches here as far as the world's sustainment on. The world is sustained on attributes of judgment, truth, and peace.